I have spent my entire academic life warning about these patterns. I have written for years about how nations rise and fall. I have cautioned again and again about the dangers of strategic missteps. But what happened today surpassed even my darkest expectations. The Chinese premier stepped onto the world stage and announced that American tariffs are harming the global economy. Yet this was not a protest, it was a declaration of ascendancy. China cast itself as the responsible guardian of global stability. The United States cast itself as the reckless actor endangering everyone's future. Let that reversal settle in for a moment. While Washington celebrated tariffs as power, China quietly built a $1 trillion trade surplus. $1 trillion. That figure reflects the absolute collapse of America's economic strategy. This is the moment I have warned about for decades. America was not defeated by China. America isolated itself, and today the entire world witnessed it unfold in real time. The global system is shifting permanently. Washington triggered this shift, and there is no return to the old order. Let me explain how we reached this disastrous point. After the Cold War, the United States dominated global economics. American companies led every sector. The dollar ruled unrivaled. Washington set the terms for the entire planet. This was not arrogance, it was fact. But Washington embraced a perilous illusion. Leaders convinced themselves that America could punish rivals endlessly without repercussions. They assumed economic warfare only harmed others. They believed allies would remain loyal regardless of the burdens placed on them. This illusion blinded Washington to three structural shifts eroding its influence. First, China's manufacturing supremacy became indispensable. The world cannot function without it. This is not ideology, it is industrial truth. Second, the global South began seeking options beyond dollar dominance. Nations observed the United States weaponize the financial system and decided they needed alternatives. Third, American allies started doubting Washington's dependability. They watched instability, unpredictability, and wounds America inflicted on itself. Naturally, they began protecting their own interests. My framework, offensive realism, argues that great powers always strive to maximize their advantage. China recognized this principle and acted on it. America forgot it and is now facing the consequences. Now, let me break down exactly what happened. The Chinese premier addressed the global community with a message crafted with precision. He stated that American tariffs are harming the world economy. He positioned China as the defender of international commerce. He offered order, while America projected disorder. This was not emotional criticism. It was strategic messaging designed to accelerate a shifting global perception. Look closely at the framing. China presents itself as the steady, responsible power safeguarding global prosperity. The United States presents itself as the reckless actor threatening worldwide economic stability. A decade ago, this narrative would have sounded absurd. Today, much of the world finds it believable. Let me clarify the players and their intentions. China sees its chance to permanently claim the moral high ground. Beijing is forming alliances with countries exhausted by American economic pressure. They offer cooperation instead of coercion, investment instead of sanctions, predictability instead of volatility. Meanwhile, the Trump administration answers by reinforcing the very tactics that created this crisis: more tariffs, more ultimatums, more isolation. They believe escalation signals strength. In truth, escalation accelerates decline. The global community is watching the United States unravel in full view. They see China's $1 trillion surplus. They see American consumers bearing rising costs. They see American companies absorbing damage. The conclusion they reach is obvious: emotions. China is not simply reacting to American actions. Based on my analysis, China is replacing American leadership. I predicted this shift, but even I did not expect it to occur at this speed. Washington's response is ensuring it happens faster. Let me explain why the American approach has already failed. The administration announces additional tariffs. Officials deliver sharper statements. Spokespersons promise increased pressure. Yet none of this addresses the core issue. America is waging a trade war. It cannot win with tools that hurt itself more than its opponent. Four fundamental reasons guarantee this failure. First, America lacks coalition support. Traditional allies refuse to align with Washington's strategy toward China. Europe continues strong trade ties with Beijing. Asian economies rely on Chinese manufacturing. The Middle East welcomes Chinese investments. America stands isolated, and isolation is not power. Second, supply chain entanglement makes decoupling impossible without triggering an economic disaster. American companies depend on Chinese components. American consumers cannot afford alternatives. American retailers cannot maintain shelves without Chinese goods. This dependency took decades to form. It cannot be undone by executive orders. Third, American credibility has collapsed. The world observes a cycle of tariff announcements, exemptions, reversals, and new proclamations. They see volatility, not strategy, short-term improvisation, not long-term planning. A great power that cannot maintain consistent policy for half a year loses global trust. Fourth, the domestic cost increases daily. American farmers lose markets permanently. Manufacturers pay more for essential materials. Consumers face climbing prices across the board. The burden falls on Americans. In Washington, the illusion persists that tariffs will force China to yield. The reality is far more brutal. Tariffs accelerate America's decline while China continues to advance. This is a textbook example of strategic self-destruction. You cannot coerce a rising power, especially not by damaging yourself in the process. Washington never absorbed this basic principle. Now, let me break down China's strategy, because understanding Beijing's approach exposes exactly where Washington failed. For decades, China relied on strategic patience. While America spent trillions on wars in the Middle East, China expanded its manufacturing engine. While America sanctioned dozens of countries, China built infrastructure across the developing world through the Belt and Road Initiative. While Washington alienated allies with erratic demands, Beijing offered predictable, long-term partnerships. That patience produced three asymmetric advantages that now define the global landscape. First, China overwhelmingly controls the world's supply chains, not partially, substantially. Most global factories are in China. Rare earth processing is in China. Electronics assembly happens in China. No other nation can replicate this dominance within any reasonable time frame. Second, China offers cooperation, not punishment. Developing nations now choose between American sanctions and Chinese investment, between American lectures and Chinese infrastructure, between American conditions and Chinese business opportunities. The decision becomes easier every year. Third, time benefits China entirely. With every passing year, Chinese technological capabilities grow, its economic influence deepens, America's relative power shrinks. Beijing simply waits while Washington drains itself. From the perspective of offensive realism, China executed strategy flawlessly: quietly build power, expand capacity, and act only when your opponent weakens himself. America handed China the perfect opening by launching a trade war it could never win. Beijing merely accepted the opportunity. The consequences of today's events extend far beyond tariffs. In the short term, more countries will align economically with China. They will sign trade deals in yuan. They will join China-led financial institutions. They will reduce their dollar reserves. This is not ideology. It is rational survival for nations watching the United States sabotage its own system. Dollar dominance now faces its most severe test in modern history. America's reserve currency status relies entirely on global trust. That trust erodes with each chaotic tariff announcement, each abandoned commitment to allies, each sign of domestic dysfunction. American businesses will accelerate their relocation efforts to escape tariff uncertainty. They will shift production to Vietnam, Mexico, India. They will diversify away from U.S. headquarters, an outcome created by Washington's own policies. The long-term shift is even more profound. We are entering a bipolar world with China emerging as the economic leader. Yes, the United States will maintain military superiority for years, but military strength without economic influence becomes a costly burden, not a strategic advantage. Global institutions will increasingly operate without American leadership. The United Nations, World Bank, and IMF will adapt to Chinese priorities. Regional alliances will sideline Washington. Decisions that once required U.S. approval will proceed without it. For years, I warned that America had an opportunity to manage China's rise intelligently, to compete without triggering self-destruction. Instead, Washington chose the one path guaranteed to accelerate its decline. The lesson I have taught for decades now stands exposed before the entire world. Great powers rarely fall because their rivals defeat them. They fall because they sabotage themselves through arrogance, misjudgment, and strategic blindness. Today, America proved this truth for all to see. China did not isolate the United States. America isolated itself, and the world has already moved on. Emotions